with Nathan Brannon on my untitled live stream series to YouTube. Sean Ongle here. This is Nathan Brannon. How are you, Nathan?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
Uh, Good, man. I'm excited to get back into streaming. I'm trying to work toward having a podcast again. I think I need to kind of get my feet wet, do this kind of stuff casually, get
Yeah,
into it again. It's been a while.
I get it.
Um, and you're out in your favorite place to be these days. I think the yard.
Yeah. We're lucky the sun's out today. This is great. It snowed last night, so
Yeah. You said you were in a small town before we went live. Where are you?
yeah, I'm in Walla Walla,
Walla Walla.
Washington. Yeah, good
So
stuff.
let's say 75 miles from Portland or something like that.
Uh, yeah, around there, about like 4 hours. I don't
Yeah.
know.
It makes it hard to get to those open mics, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know. Now it's all just in fields and stuff.
Dave Chappelle style.
Yep, exactly. That's
Do you actually put on shows in the yards and stuff out there?
Yeah. There it's a big wine town, so there's a lot of wineries that love comedy and breweries and things like that. So I'm
That
out in the
sounds
fields.
that sounds good.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I dig it. I like this place a lot.
I was excited to talk to you because you do so much gardening, and I like anytime an artist starts gardening. I like that anytime it happens. So
It's an art
I
within itself.
yeah, for sure. I believe in preparation, being self-sufficient, and all that kind of stuff.
hmm
To
That's
me,
it.
yeah.
It's
When
so
did you
funny.
start? Yeah,
Oh no, yeah, it's so funny how yeah now everyone's kind of thinking about it. I guess since last year.
yeah. When did you start doing that?
Oh boy, like started growing or just like
Yeah, when and how
grow your own
did that?
stuff. Let's see. I've been growing for about 13 years, I think, or so.
Did it
But
start with?
really,
Did it start with vegetables or with weed?
that's the thing. Everybody always thinks I grow weed. I don't grow. I'm not very good at it, to be honest. Uh, it's too much patience, and I mean,
Weed, weed.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah. It's
lot.
not
Well,
easy.
not. It's a very fickle plant, and then on top of that, I mean, I grow stuff you can eat. If you grow that one, you'll just get hungry, want to eat more. But you use all the space to grow that plant, so now you don't have anything to eat, but you got the munchies.
Got to
It's,
diversify.
I'll give it a shot one day, but yeah, it's always so funny. People are like, "Oh, let me see your grow area. What you got?"
Yeah.
And then they get disappointed when it's all just Brussels sprouts.
Nobody's too excited about Brussels sprouts, man.
Have you smoked them? They're great.
Oh, you're straying from the signal.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But yeah, so you started growing vegetables. I forget even what you said. When was that?
About 13 years ago, I had a lot of family that was into growing stuff, so I kind of just picked it up, and then later on, it helps you out a lot. I found out, so
Mm-hmm.
that's the stuff.
Um, How did you find out? I gotta know what that means.
Oh, look. So it's funny when I moved to this small town, right? I don't know if a lot of people realize I'm a comedian as well, and it was kind of a big deal that I left, like the major comedy hubs. Um, but
You
what
were
it
you were
did is it,
Portland's funniest person in 2012.
oh boy, yeah, like 12 or something. Jesus, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, that's
I'm
a big
old, man.
honor. You followed. I think it was. Do you remember the lineage? I think it was the first year. It was Ian Carmel, who's now a big
I
shot,
think so. Yeah, right.
and I think the
Ian,
next
me.
year, and Ron Funches.
I don't know if he won it. I
He
think
was
he was
always a
already
finalist, but
famous.
he might never have won it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was already famous by the time I came around. So
He, no, he wasn't yet. Because when I came around, uh, he was the host at Helium when I did my first open mic.
ah,
But
yeah. So it's been a while, and I had a family and everything, and it was kind of in best interest for my own mental health and for the family in general. Um, Plus, I got a lot of good advice from a comedian I really look up to, so that's
who's
kind of a
that?
big reason I'm out here. I don't know. It's not really popular, I guess, to
Okay.
say who it is right now. But it is what it is.
But that's a big
Um,
decision. I mean, you were doing well there, and you moved to the country now. You're way out,
yeah, I
outside
guess
of the
it.
kind of uh, metropolis. I'm looking for a different cosmopolitan world that comedy
Yeah,
tends to thrive in.
I'm venturing into rural America, saying trying to press my luck. I picked the perfect time to move to small white towns, but yeah, here I am.
Well, you got your family there, and it's probably the best for them,
Hmm.
right?
It is, yeah. Um, and that's kind of, I think, it put a lot in perspective. I think once I moved out here too, because I got to see a lot of aspects of society that you don't really pay attention to when you're in entertainment. And my focus more, especially with all this growing, is trying to help those areas and most like the vulnerable areas. Do you know what I mean? Um,
Well,
with the skill set I have.
yeah. There's I mean, I'm in North Philly these days. It's where I live now.
Oh yeah! Shout
I
out
would call
Indiana.
that a vulnerable area. It,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the spot. There's places like those. My, I know people think I'm like really nerdy about plants, but that's the heart of it. Um, I hope if anybody sees this, that's kind of like places like that. Um, I think a lot about redlining and things like that. Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to like get like crazy militant, but a lot of
yeah,
aspects of society really played a big role in putting a lot of people in the communities that they're in. And not to say those communities are bad, but they've been forgotten at the very least. Um, and I always saw kind of, even when I was a comedian, I mean, I'm still a comedian, of course, but even when I was just telling jokes, I always saw it as an issue like the people in those communities like needing stuff to look forward to or be empowered by. Do you know what I mean?
for sure.
Does that sound like, I mean, because everyone wants to write off. I mean, I grew up in those communities, just like, well, the Portland version of Philly, I guess you could
Where
call it.
did you grow up?
But I grew up in St. John's. It's like kind of like a smaller area right outside of like Portland proper.
You grew up in
Uh,
St. John's.
St. John's,
You,
and then I moved to the Northeast for like my young
me
adult
and
years.
I
So
just I'm not sure if you are aware of how special my relationship to St. John's is. But didn't you play No Fest? Didn't I book you for that festival
I think so. Yeah.
in St. John's? Right, you played at the Fixin' Two, and Richard Bain got in a good spat with. Do you remember
Yeah.
that night?
I remember that night
Yeah, yeah.
totally.
Hmm.
R.I.P. Richard, man. Yeah,
Oh
it was
shit!
a
I didn't
fun
know. Wait,
place
wait! I
too.
didn't know he passed.
Yeah,
R.I.P. Fuck! I didn't know
yeah.
that, dude.
It was a while ago. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it still hit you like a brick. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I knew he
that's
moved to L.A. and I kind of. That's about it.
that's a
Uh,
business, man. That's a part of it. So I mean,
he was funny. He was such an element.
yeah, very.
That was a special time, wasn't it? That moment.
It really was. I think a lot of the kind of show times back in that time in my life was really. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Me
not
too.
there anymore, but it's yeah.
I fucked it up, and I was kind of a terrible comic, but I loved it. It was great.
Oh, it doesn't matter if you're good or not. especially
Yeah.
these days. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
man,
That's where
St.
I mean.
John's. That's where I grew up.
I'm with you. Oh yeah. So you grew up out in the north part of Portland, and yeah, it was a little rough and tumble back then, from what I've heard in those days. St.
Yeah.
John's. Um,
Shout out
Philly's
to
like a whole
Roosevelt.
new level. I've never, had never really lived or seen anything like this. Now it's my own neighborhood.
Yeah, I was about to say it's probably not as bad as out in Philly, but
Yeah. Um, but there are projects out here for urban gardens, and I'm trying to get out to the country now at this point, and kind of do what you're doing. I'm not trying to do a whole farm, but I want some acres and
yeah,
a lot of space. I want a lot of gardening. And Portland is so special in so many ways. I lived on a farm in the city limits, just right. That's how I got acquainted with St. John's, because I lived just
yeah,
around Linton area on this farm, and we would cruise into St. John's and hang out there, and it was
yeah.
amazing
Back
to.
then there was a lot of like rural kind of areas. Maybe that's why I kind of gravitated towards a space like this. It feels more comfortable, I guess. But
Hmm.
yeah, a lot of those places that used to be around, and I'm really focused on self-sufficiency lately and how I can help other people kind of feel it, especially in these days. I mean, financially, how many people are still going hungry and losing their places still, being evicted and all that stuff. Um, and really what bothered me, I think, a lot to get me kind of motivated to do this kind of work is every time you hear about a poor community or someone talks about the problems in that community, which is primarily lived in by people of color, they want to kind of frame it as those people are lazy, unmotivated, ungrateful, like different things like that, without ever taking into account a person's view of their immediate world around them, and how much that affects, like how much empowerment, motivation you have. Do you know what I mean? Um, a
I
big
see it.
example I always point to, like the Black Panthers and their breakfast program. You know what I mean? That was a big kind of influence on the kind of work that I do now. Is at the very least, um, you want to set those people, the members of your community, up for success, so that they're able to not worry about certain things, um, or they just feel like there's a gap for them to put their foot in the door with. Do you know what I mean? Um, I can't. I mean, sorry to just kind of
It's
blab a whole bunch, but it's so deep.
I
You
wonder
know,
if you are. See, I'm these days. Okay, since I didn't expect you to go into like political angles, but I'm totally
yeah,
down. I'm really getting all over the map these days. I was just talking to. I just mentioned the Black Panthers to somebody a couple of hours ago on the phone, and we. It was through. Here was the thread of the conversation. Here in Philly downtown, we got a place called Rittenhouse Square. I said, let's go down to Rittenhouse tonight. We were talking about drinking, maybe doing a little mushrooms or something, walking around, and just I'll put that out there. And
it's Saturday.
it's Saturday night, bro. Come on. So so I was, let's go down to Rittenhouse Square and celebrate Kyle. It was a joke. Now, some people are celebrating, some people are not into it. And what I mentioned to him was, like the Black Panthers was a guns rights organization and a socialist organization and a left wing. I mean, they're what the Black Panthers, and frankly, I mean, I need to get to know them better, but Malcolm X, all their politics back then don't fit in today's typical lefty worldview anymore. And,
It's
but
yeah, Fred
but
Hampton,
I'm
all that. Yeah,
I'm all for that community driven self empowerment angle that Malcolm X and the Black Panthers took, and I think that kind of spirit has been intentionally hollowed out in those communities because it was dangerously empowering. That's my
to
view.
a lot of people that are, it's imperative that they stay powerless, is how I see it. I mean, that's the heart of all my work. I mean, even going back to people writing off older people of color, people, or, older poor people with all their health problems, and it's their own fault, yet completely ignoring that their entire life uh, they weren't really given access to anything healthy to kind of help them be healthy. Do you know what I mean? They get priced out of a lot of stuff, even today, to this very second. Poor places, even if they have some sort of healthy option, vegetable wise, it costs an arm and a leg. Um, and
Now,
I mean,
I'm
that
going to
has to be
say
broken
this.
down.
Some of it, I don't, and then, okay, so I also don't lift all of the I don't feel that anybody should blame outside circumstances totally for their situation. You got to start from where you are. Where you are may be a horrible place to start from. When I was in Portland, I really took advantage of the social welfare state that it is. It enabled me to live an artistic, creative life. I was broke as a joke the whole
Yeah,
time, and but I can't really, I don't spend what I used to spend on groceries because SNAP benefits gave me $200 a month, and I was able to buy maple syrup and all organic food, and I don't really swing that anymore because now I buy my own food. So I think it's like there's enough social safety net there, not just Oregon, but really everywhere in this country to handle a lot of that. And then you just need, if you can teach somebody to grow a little garden, that just changes the game right there. But I think the bigger problem is it's harder to get yourself from the bottom. Maybe then you sell your food stamps to pay another bill. I totally understand the momentum, the inertia of poverty, and I can see it all over Philly. I see neighborhoods that used to be occupied by single worker households, black neighborhoods, not just, we're talking factory workers, and they could support their family. And now
yeah,
the next generation, those factory jobs weren't even available, but they inherited the property. The third generation, now they're just basically a crime. They're just engaging in crime to survive, or they just work at Dunkin' Donuts and there's four incomes happening in the house, but it's barely enough to keep it going because it's slipped so much over these last 50 years. I see the inertia, but I don't think anybody can get around the fact that they have to lift their own asses up from wherever they are.
yeah. I know it, but the issue is it's not like a deficit of people wanting to lift themselves up. I think there's a surplus of people wanting to make sure that there's no way for them to
Oh yeah.
actually lift themselves up.
Then there's
So
the
I mean,
forces, then there's those
yeah,
oppressive forces too, and those are
exactly.
hard to fight against. You're
And they're
always going
far more
against that.
widespread than I think people kind of give credit to. I'm all for SNAP benefits and things like that, and I think it's a really great thing, but it's woefully insufficient for the issues, the problems that
Doesn't
are
solve
keeping
the
people where they
problems.
are. Yeah, I mean it's really at the heart of it. I feel like it's like to placate people to not have them really understand where they are as far as societal hierarchy and all that good stuff. So I mean it's really great. But here's the thing. So, especially last year, they were talking about when everything was being shut down and people were losing their jobs, and they didn't want things to be shut down forever because I think their angle was there'd be a lot more suicides and stuff like that. Um, I know it's not like a great time to quote Chappelle, but I mean, a quote was, taking a person's livelihood is akin to killing them, right? The feeling that you make your own way or that what you have is something that you own or that you've built up or something like that is very, very important to any kind of movement societally, I think that's a word, but it's very, very important, that mindset. People want to talk about ghettos and things like that, and talk about it's a mindset and things like that, but then they don't really address why that mindset is there. Yes, SNAP benefits help you like get certain foods and things like that, but it's the reflection that it causes. Do you know what I mean? Not to say it's a bad thing, but
Yeah. So
It's not
you're
going to
actually
save
sounding a
people.
lot more conservative than like a liberal's gonna be like, just take a bunch of money, throw it at these people, everything will be fine. But you're sounding a lot more conservative in your approach, which is education, teach people to understand what the power mechanism is, so they can get them, so they can outsmart it. Maybe teach people how to grow their own food so they can be self-sufficient. Teach. It's not about just taking benefits from the state. I'm more of an anarchist. I feel like we need to solve our problems as as communities.
I get that. I'm kind of on that. I don't mean to sound so conservative because I think those arguments are just used to stop the argument. Do you know what I mean? Like, or to stop the debate. They'll say the same things, kind of like what you're saying. Like they'll say, "Oh, they need to pick themselves up, or they need to have a better mindset and fucking lift their asses up," and then that's where they stop. And they
Right.
say that
Right.
because they don't want the attention being brought on the fact that they own most of the supply chain, or they don't, or they own most of the real estate in those same places,
Right.
right? So if you're in a
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood, I'm in a nice neighborhood, and I've had like conservative family members. They ask, like, coming from Portland, they go, "Why is there all this, this and that in the streets, or in poor neighborhoods, or in black neighborhoods, or whatever?" Um, they always try to go like black on black crime and stuff like that. I'm one of the only black people here, so of course I hear that all the time. And the example I always post to them is like, look at the neighborhood you're living in, right? Like a nice middle class, whatever. No one's trying to rob everybody on the street. Why do you think that is? Because everyone knows everybody has enough. Do you know what I mean? You see your neighbor across the street with a nice brand new car. You don't get bent out of shape, right? Because kind of like you have enough to not feel as desperate. Do you know what I mean? If you see somebody in a place like I own my house. Luckily, I'm very, very lucky. But a lot of places, where I grew up, this is the first time I've owned anything like that. A lot of places, a lot of the neighborhoods I grew up in, nobody owns the land. Nobody owns the buildings or whatever. Or even if they're lucky to rent a house, they don't own that house. The whole community. So like you sit there and the things that garner you respect in a middle class, upper middle class place, you see somebody working on their place, you respect them for that. But if you are in a poor area where nobody owns anything, you working on your house or whatever, nobody respects that, right? Because you're just basically fixing up something for somebody else who's already exploiting everybody in the neighborhood. So then the question becomes, how do we create a sense of ownership in those communities to where people can get to the mindset of, I don't need whatever you have. When these companies and stuff come in or set up some sort of store, they should have the ability, like other wealthier communities, to say, well, we don't really need you. You know what I mean? We'll boycott a lot. I mean, how can you boycott a grocery store where that's the only place for you to get food in your community? That's the problem. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm not saying like, you guys need to build up, pick yourself up by the bootstraps and then leave it at that. If I say anything, I say we all need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and here's how you do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's
Like,
not. I think this is where the new conservatives are going. That's the direction they're going. I listen to the ultra left and the ultra right. Ultra left are going straight socialist. They want, which I just don't trust the state to handle any money. I don't trust them to run programs. But in, I would trust my community to. That's where I'm standing these days. I just don't trust the lawmakers and the federal government to run these programs. But I do trust my communities to. So if we could completely decentralize government again, go back to more where it it really went from a more bottoms up, and of course this is when voting rights were extremely limited, but in terms of community driven power, understanding that the people who had the power were a very limited group, and just even voting rights. But still, the way it was structured, there was more community empowerment and decision making in the laws in your community, whereas now it's like federal government down, it's top down. That's how it seems. And so around the 1850s, that's when that began to change. Cities went, well, like St. John's was its own town. Portland gobbled it up. Portland was a much smaller area on the map, and there was lots of small townships surrounding it. And that happened in every big city across this country. So the more you homogenize and when you take away a small community's township and turn it into a big city, you're taking away their own communities, police force, courts, political bodies, and everything. So imagine if we had maintained that structure, but then also had universal voting rights at the same time. It would be a completely different world. And I just see
a bunch of like kind of smaller communities, autonomous communities.
well, it would be like just the way I'm just imagining the way it was that where a city as large as Portland had 6 different towns in it, 150 years ago. And that means that each town had its own courthouse and police force and etc. So those communities governed those much more closely to their needs and their standards. And I think
Like like they have more invested in that community, like they're a part of that community.
they have far more power. Every property owner at that time, that was basically who had the power, property owner. So every property owner had a lot more leverage in their local politic than the way things are structured today, because it's far more centralized. So if we had now the same structure but universal voting rights the way we have it today, and it just seems like it would change the game. It would make, to me, the power being given back to. I'm fascinated by power, the way power and control, those dynamics, and so I'm always concerned with who has the power, who benefits from this and that, and it always seems to suck out of these communities, like the ones that I live in, which has been, on the
Yeah,
downslide for decades.
I totally see what you're saying. I think from my standpoint, well, I think of just like a lot of poor people in general, we don't have the luxury or the time to wait on that. My concern mainly is for the people on the ground right now. So, I mean, it's kind of along those same lines. Yeah, like you don't need to wait for the government to come, you know, send out something that's going to save you. I guess I could say that. But I mean, so like, when's the next time to vote? Do you know what I mean? How many meals? How many rent checks? How many, car tips is it until then? How much are you gonna how much are you gonna own? Like your leverage as far as like how society works here, between now and the next time we vote. I mean, I don't think the poorer aspect of society has that much time. I think a lot of people need to get out and get their hands dirty. Do you know what I mean? I mean, that's the whole reason I even teach people like how to grow food is because like you can't do anything politically, socially, all that different stuff if you're starving, if you don't have a good base to start off of. That's why the Black Panthers started the breakfast program in the first place. They didn't start the dinner program. They started the breakfast program because they knew if you were ever going to pull yourself up or whatever,
If you're going to school
if you don't
hungry,
have your basic needs. Exactly. Every major civilization that's ever come about, the first thing they do when they get together collectively is they find a way to sustain themselves, food wise. Do you know what I mean? The cultivation of crops, of um, cattle rearing and things like that. They find out how they can take that out of the equation, so that's not something that they have to worry about. They can put more energy towards the things that are uplifting, upbuilding, and that's where I'm at. I'm not gonna be able to show you how to break down the system or anything like that. I'm very aware of all that different stuff. But that's not my skill set. My skill set is how um, to make it so that long term, the things that you're putting in your body don't equate to high hospital bills or society leaving you later on because they assume you're sick and old and lazy and all that stuff. Like feeding your kids. If you don't have a job, there was a lot of times when I moved out here that like you kind of have to come to face the fact like your career might be over. How do you generate money when you have a kid? You just can't say, "Oh, my career's over." You got to figure it out. And I know there's all kinds of dads, parents in general, that are out there right now, and I'm sure they understand like government needs to do more and change, like be a better champion for the people. But when you're losing all your paycheck to just go and buy some soup or or whatever you're buying for your family and things like that. That aspect is what I'm focused on. I want people to be able. My whole every time you see anything I post, is a hashtag says "Eat healthy, save money." That's the heart of it, the total heart of it. I mean, in wealthier neighborhoods, access to healthy food is much easier, and even if there is access in these poor communities, it's by a corporation. Like, I'm not trying to like get oh, but like some sort of store, some company that brings that produce to you, and just off of rules of capitalism or just trying to keep your business afloat, you're not going to give those customers the very best of what you can. You're going to give them the very best that will allow you to keep your bottom line. So that means, I mean, even if you can afford some of this stuff in these communities, like you're not even getting the best of that. Do you know what I mean? It's that's the best case scenario, and most of the time that doesn't even happen. I mean, I grew up when I was in high school. Our main thing was a deli. That's what we ate every day, fried everything. And I mean, choosing in a place with a free market system, choosing not to put your business in a certain community, right? When you can be looked at as a form of sanctions. I feel like you're not like even if you put that thing in there and you charge them all this money for whatever just to have like basic whatever. Um, it's kind of like a form of sanctions. You get what I tell you you can get, and you're going to give up a little bit of your power, which is your financial um, stake in society, right? So that's my thing. Is like, do you? I'm. I want to show you how to be healthier, so you can live longer and save that money, so that you can use it effectively to, be more powerful in your community
You know what else
later
happens
on.
when you start growing food, or let's extend this idea. What if it's not just growing your own food, because that's not necessarily for everybody, or it may be for every household because there could be somebody in the household who's good at it, but then the next person might be better at the carpentry or fixing the car. And whatever it is you do that makes you more self-sufficient, I think you should always accentuate that, work on that, and practice it in your life. And
Mhm.
food is one route, and there's many routes. But if you really are balanced, you're doing it all. You're growing your food, you're fixing your own shit. I mean, this is the DIY culture was built into Portland very much. By the time I got there in '03, it was enlightening. It was like all these people care about the environment, all these people care about good food, and it's like there's co-ops, and the co-ops are accessible. They're all over different communities. Co-ops were in Alberta before Alberta had money. It was like it's that was really cool back then, and now it seems like, unfortunately, even those kind of a lot of those places aren't able to keep going. Like those places that were the pioneers of the healthy alternative lifestyles in Portland, they've been priced out of their businesses and so on. And I mean,
I
it's
get that.
just
Yeah.
it's just crazy. So now, like those
Yeah.
communities that didn't have that before, now they do, but those aren't poor neighborhoods anymore.
Yeah, and I think my angle too about it is, yeah, it's great if everyone grows their own stuff in their house and all that stuff, but I'm really aimed more at the communities in general, more of like a kind of like a co-op, I think, in a sense, but having a centralized place that's there to serve the community. Do you know what I mean? And not just as some kind of welfare program, but it's growing, especially growing things that are edible, but even growing things that are ornamental, is a way of generating income, product, uh, some sort of entrepreneurial angle. And it's literally your product comes out of nowhere almost, like out of the ground. So, like, you have a few people running a garden that's there to serve that whatever community. Um, and now they have a product that they can sell outside of that community, bringing more of those dollars back in. But at the very least, you have
Food to eat.
an apparatus that gets like you don't have to worry. No one in that neighborhood should have to worry about what am I going to feed myself? What am I going to feed my kids? Do you know what I mean? That's brain activity and time and effort and energy that could be going into something that helps you in some other aspect. How do I get into the stock market? How do I get into land ownership? These things that are kind of out of reach in a lot of poorer areas that aren't even really thought of because you got to think of your basic needs first, right? So, I mean, I think there's a lot more
What's
people that should focus on how to get those people those basic needs on their own terms, not so much like a handout, because we know what that does to people's sense of identity in a larger society. It's not going to work just to go and drop a whole bunch of money and say, "Hey, now you got it. Now we're even." You completely write off the fact that, like you've been telling that whole community for decades, you're not important. You're not skilled. You don't have anything to offer, and it's a lie.
when
I guess. Yeah.
Also when you take somebody's time and you inspire them to do something other than whatever goof off bullshit, and they start growing something, making something happen, seeing something come out of the ground, whatever it is that they're doing, to it's like that's way better time spent, costs no money, and it's better for you. It's like that's something that's like an angle that people don't think about enough with these kinds of wholesome activities. You're spending no money doing it, and you're
Yeah.
actually in the end you're doing something that's going to be a net benefit. So
And not only are
in,
you not spending money doing it, you're able to put that money that you're not spending towards something else that will start working for you.
or time,
You
maybe
know
you're
what I
not,
mean?
maybe that time is exchanged.
Sure.
I've played this game with myself my whole adult life. I exchange time for money all the time. I know that I could have been a six-figure earning engineer if that's what I had focused my entire life on, or something like that. I could have been a high earning whatnot. I know I have the skills, the talent, the intelligence. I know I have all that, but I've always been trading time and freedom with that, in
Yes.
exchange for the potential of money.
I think especially last year, a lot like wider than poor community. I think our society as a whole started realizing that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like say,
yeah.
looking at how much of your life you give to
I think that was a
stuff with no
backfire of
benefit.
the lockdown, but maybe not. Maybe this is all part of the plan. I kind of think
Yeah.
they're always two steps ahead.
True.
But yeah, so by doing this type of gardening and whatnot, you all these benefits, health benefits for you, time, money saved, or freedom gained, whatever it is. But inspiring people is the tough part. It takes a funny person, or it takes a very sexy person, or something to get the attention
Uh-oh.
of.
I gotta do some sit-ups.
Yeah. Well, you're funny. As long as you can keep being charismatic and making it seem fun to do gardening, then you're doing your job. I think you're doing the at least it's the best you can, and you're using what you can to inspire people. And part of me doing these live streams is get off the sidelines because it may not be a big audience at first. Maybe it'll grow. I hope it does. But it's it's the only thing I can do to help highlight people who I think are doing something valuable. And
And it's yeah, I think it's really cool, and I thank you for thinking of me. That's kind of how I feel. Like we're kind of in our what do you call it, the prime of our lives, I guess. But
that's what I've been trying to call it. That's the
you
silver
know,
lining.
we're the young adults. I know, like when we were kids, you think about all the adults that were, running things at that time, and you think about, man, like when it's on my watch, what's going to happen? Well, it's on our watch now. Like it doesn't. I mean, you don't have to save the world. You just look around at what you have at your disposal, the skills you have at your disposal, and how do you make communities stronger? How do you make this place better? It's kind of the whatever. I'm not going after world peace. I just want people to feel good about themselves so that they can do other stuff. You can't get exploited if you feel good about yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm a little. I think you should move around though somewhere where the video just keeps staying. It keeps being choppy on my end. I keep thinking it's catching up, but it's.
Oh, really?
I think somewhere around the other side of the house or something. It was really solid, but now audio's been fine the
Yeah.
whole time. So that's the
Okay.
bottom line to
Yeah.
me.
Sorry.
But anyway, yeah, and we're on the same page. It's interesting to see to be having this kind of level of conversation. It is. It is. I do think more and more people are thinking this way, where it's time to be self-sufficient. You have people that were living in Manhattan that are moving down to Philly because they can have a much larger house and buy a house. They can afford to buy a house here.
Yeah.
It's interesting how it changes. My whole neighborhood is very much occupied. It's a low-income neighborhood, but it's majority. It's I think majority home ownership. It's you can go 5 blocks down the way and it could become a rent dominated area. It's interesting,
Yeah.
but it's hard to motivate people. I do these park cleanups. We got this amazing 4 mile stretch of creek, forested creek. There's bird walks. They do all kinds of, there's deer that you'll spot all the time when you go down there. And it's just right in my front yard pretty much. And baseball there's a baseball diamond and then a boys and girls club and then this big creek. It's a nice green spot in this otherwise very concrete, dirty city. Literally very dirty.
Wow.
It's famously dirty city. But I do these cleanups, pulling the trash out of the creek all the time. Not as much this year, but anyway, I pulled hundreds of pounds of trash out of there. And the thing is, like, when I look at who shows up to those, I go, this is not the people. These are not my neighbors. I've passed around flyers to my neighbors, and they don't come, and it's discouraging. It makes you just like, be like, oh, fuck it. That's what makes me
I
how it
get
makes
that.
me
Yeah.
feel. I want
I
more
get it.
community engagement, but it's very hard to. Everybody's so conditioned to just expect the government to solve things, which is understandable because they
I
tax
get
us
that.
so much. you know,
Truth.
you're like,
Yeah.
you better handle it. Shit.
Yeah. Right. My street's still not fixed. I paid for that a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Where were we talking about this 5 years ago? It
Yeah.
gets nuts, but I don't know what to do. Motivation is very tough
I
outside of
mean, I
authority.
don't. I'm old enough to, I think, kind of know, like, yeah, we're not going to save the world and things like that. But I mean, we are in the driver's seat as far as like our generation right now. I think, yeah, kind of what you're saying. Like, it's hard to motivate people. I think uh, it kind of gets framed about like if you don't have these certain skills, then you can't really help anyone. You know what I mean? But I feel like if we get more people to say, hey, look around you, look what you have at your disposal, and figure out how to make it serve all of us. Rather than just being like, oh, I'm not really good at this, I'm not really good at that. That's what they need. Everybody has something. I would hope that would be the way that we inspire people, but I totally get it. Yeah, it's hard to get people to. to buy in up front.
Yeah, and it's not always due to time or lack of time, and it's not always due to lack of time or ability. It does
Yeah,
often come right just down to motivation, and you don't need, in a neighborhood my dense, dude. There's 1,000 people living immediately adjacent to that creek, at least, probably thousands.
yeah,
I mean, it's dense. This is so you don't need all those people showing up. You only need like 1 to 2% to make a substantial difference in the environmental quality of that creek. Just to talk about that
yeah.
one example, and that's I think what it takes in every community. Probably just a few percent of the people to engage to change it. And I saw how much of an impact you can make in Portland because it's a very special place. There's so many programs that punch above their budgets that their impacts are much stronger than the budgets and the I mean it's very impressive what the kind of stuff like the rebuilding center, free geek, these environmental programs where materials are reused. You can't even get anything close to that in Philly. I mean, there's some stuff close to it, but considering the size of this city, nothing close
Yeah.
to the level of community projects in Portland. But here's the thing: a lot of those occurred with a relatively homogenous culture and with a little bit
Exactly.
more comfort, financial like safety, that little bit of lift there. Makes a massive difference.
And that's what I think everyone, every community, that's all they need to push. The only reason I started posting videos and pictures of all the stuff I'm doing and how to stuff is because I've learned people, especially in this day and age, have to see somebody do it first before they stand up and start giving it a try. It's not enough to just tell people like, "Hey, you should do that." Like the places have to buy in. I think that's what happened a lot with like places like Portland. Is people were like, "Yeah, and they're doing it right there. Let me get in on this." But yeah, I totally get
Yeah.
it.
Um, I yeah. I mean, when I got here, I was like motivated. How do I bring Portland's great work here? Like, how do I? It's too difficult at this point. I'm just like, you know what? I got to save myself. I need to
I get that. Yeah,
focus on myself. I mean, I'll go to the park and clean trash and stuff like that, but the last few years I've just been getting because I did so much community work in Portland that I never took care of myself, and I never got myself
I
out
get
of
that.
having being broke. And so at least the last few years I've been just taking care of my bottom line. And I think I had a friend. Shout out to Crave Dog Merchandising, the dude that ran that company. He told me because he was a sponsor of No Fest and stuff like that. He would say, "You don't have any money. How are you running a nonprofit? It doesn't make any sense. Like you have to take care of your own self. You have to start a business like me, and or something. Do something, and then you can do that." But he just gave me that warning. But he kept sponsoring me. Very supportive person. But he knew that I was being a fool for myself. Um,
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that's yeah, that's pretty much what I tell everybody else. Is like, hey, like you got to get yourself centered first, before you can do all this and that and stuff to affect the rest of society. I
yeah.
totally get that. Yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, maybe I think there's plenty of life ahead of me. Maybe this live stream series is community work in itself. It is. It is kind
I
of.
I really dig it, and I dig like your enthusiasm for trying to help out your community and stuff too. And a lot of stuff I don't think like with this kind of work, I think deep down you hope that the masses, I don't know, where like embrace it and you go viral and things like that. But I think the heart of this kind of stuff is not so much for the masses to. You don't expect the masses to kind of get on board
No,
like
you
like
need
that. You
asses
know
for
what
the
I mean?
masses.
Yeah. I myself personally, I'm this past year or so, I've gotten so tired when people just with talk. Do you know what I mean? Trying to influence people's ideas about certain things, which is, I understand how important that is. I'm a rhetoric major. But at the end of the day, me personally, I would like when I tell somebody something, and they can go, oh yeah, whatever, but they'll see the result. If I tell you something, it's because it works and it helps. So I mean, even if they don't give you the eyeballs or the attention, eventually somebody's going to catch that attention of the end product, the end results of your work, and hopefully get inspired to do the same thing, pick up the torch, all that good stuff.
You know what I've been thinking is, it doesn't take if the future. I'm having a complex thought right now. I'm going to start it back here, and then I'm going to come to what I. So basically, it's a luxury to just do talking, just to talk. Like we can talk about gardening, but until we're gardening, uh,
Hmm.
it's pointless. Thankfully, you are. So, you know, I need to get back to it. I have a little. I had some boxes. I have some boxes in the front yard. I kind of gave up on vegetables because it was so much work for such a small yield in my little front yard. But
Yeah.
other. But I could keep doing that. I just wanted to have flowers and for it to look nice because it's just not a lot. It's a lot of work to get like a few tomatoes. But anyway, when I have acres, I'm gonna rock the shit out of that garden. You'll see, man.
Hmm.
I'll be sharing those
I
photos with
believe
you.
in you.
Now, when we're just talking and we're not doing the work, like it's great to have these podcasts where we're talking about anarchism or we're talking about politics or whatever. But in between them, we better be doing something. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
just talk, and that's a great luxury to have. And it's kind of pointless. There's a lot of chatter out there. But I think that might be the future of what media is as it decentralizes on its own. It seems to the market forces on their own seem to be causing this decentralization where, for one thing, a comedian who just has real conversations with people over the course of 10 years grows to be the most popular, well-known interviewer in the world. Now we're talking about Joe Rogan. Now he came out of relative obscurity. I mean, he hosted a fringe show. Yeah, then suddenly he was the most popular podcaster and media personality in the world
True. Yeah.
just because he was being genuine, being a regular person. And you're seeing the dissolution and the complete disintegration of mass media to where audiences that used to expect 10 million are happy to get a million. I mean, CNN, that kind of NBC, these kinds of outlets were expecting larger audience. So now that's disintegrating and it's being replaced with audiences to where, like me, my goal, I'd love to have 1,000 followers tops. Tops. I'd be stoked to have 1,000 legit followers. Maybe more views than that, but like that would be to me a huge goal. Even though people get into the tens of millions of views per interview, because with 1,000 people you can support yourself. With 1,000 people, I can boost your signal. You don't need necessarily Twitter and Instagram to get your message out. If you can go on 5 different live streams or podcasts where there's at least 1,000 listener followers on each. And I'm wondering if we might get to a point where this sort of patchwork, almost blockchain-like media system, where nobody owns it, and you don't even need Twitter or Facebook to get your message out because there's so many different places you can just plug in and get to these micro audiences. That'll be dope. If that's what happens, that's kind of what I'm hoping for.
What was that kind of theory or so? The rule of 150,
Right? Yeah,
having a
you
lot of
change it.
smaller pockets.
Yeah, like if you can reach, or if 150 people come together on something or whatever, it can make like a massive. impact. Something I
Yeah, you
forget
can
how that
have
works.
that much closer of a connection than you can with um, larger groups, I guess.
Right, because if there's 1,000 people that really relate to me, then that's just how that is. There's, it'll be they'll yeah, they'll listen a lot more attentively, I think, than if you're just on CNN for 3 minutes talking about your garden. Hey, look at this little do do do, and then you're gone. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
uh, which would be great if you ever get that chance. Take it. Show
Oh,
your
for sure. Yeah,
aquaponics on CNN. But I just wonder, like the days leading into the apocalypse, all these podcasts were just talking and yakking away all the time. What are those going to sound like? That's what I dream of sometimes. What are these
I mean,
podcasts going to sound like leading into the apocalypse?
also as a comedian, I mean, that was the whole arena, right? It's
What?
the loudest voices, it's all talk. And then it's just who can talk the loudest, who can, this and that. That was how you get things, like in that avenue, that arena, I guess is the right way. You know what I mean? Just a bunch of comedians being like, "Hey, look at me," and consolidating themselves
Yeah.
uh, for doing certain things, and then not really having much of an impact unless you want to just throw some ideas out there that people think about as afterthoughts later on.
Hmm.
I mean, that's cool. It's great. It's just I don't know how sustainable it is either, like long term. But we'll see, I guess.
We can make it sustain. I mean, that's what I want. I want us all to be having fun. I want joy in our lives. I want us to go to have our open mics. I don't think we have to give all this stuff up. It just has to be much better managed, and people have to have more control and empowerment in their lives. But we need that. We need the luxury of feeling like we have the spare time to just be creative, to do art. Otherwise, life gets to be quite drab. Drab? Yeah, drab, and it sucks. So I love it. I love it when there's a community or a city. I don't, a place like Portland where so many people were creative. And that all was the case when it was cheap to live there. As soon as it gets expensive, everything's hard. Even though that can, like, you go to New York City, those are the best comics in the world. They're driven very hard to work hard, become the best. There's a lot of pressure that comes with I think people need pressure. Human beings need pressure. So I'm not saying that it should, like, life should just be easy and coddled through it. It should be kind of a kick in the ass to some extent, so you get build some character. But obviously these days the balance is way off. But I think
Yeah,
great. I mean, a lot of the
yeah. There's
greatest, funniest.
no shortage of pressure.
No, but look at who are the funniest comedian, or not necessarily funniest. I'm not gonna say who are the most successful comics right now. Aren't they all from Philly? Tina Fey, Kevin Hart, uh,
Yeah, true.
even
Even the rappers.
Will Smith, Meek Mill. He's huge now, right? That guy. Um,
uh, he's making
is
his
he
way. He's
is he
doing well.
big? I don't know. I don't really know
He's
what's
out of
going
jail,
on.
so that's it.
Oh, really? I
Him and
don't
Drake
really
are back
follow.
together, so it's good.
Oh shit. That's I don't follow whatever's too popular. I don't really know. If it's good music, I listen. He had one really good track. Anyway, yeah, I feel like things in, like, this city are far more fragmented, and there's way more poverty. There's way more um, kind of economic segregation. Uh,
Yeah.
so I see
I
how
mean,
tough it is.
that's the egg that needs to crack. I mean, the more holes you can put in that aspect of society, I think a lot of the other stuff will start to avalanche. But I mean, we're a capitalist society. You can't. I mean, that's your leverage. That's your power. If you don't have access to it, or you let somebody else take control of it, I mean, you're dooming yourself to just going through the motions for your whole life, and then that's it. And that's No good for me.
Um, do you want to share anything with your? The video is still pretty tough, but
I'm sorry.
yeah, no, I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just slow speed.
It's so we only have one. This is a good example. We only have one internet service provider in this town. You know what I mean?
Yeah, therefore
We're,
they're not incentivized to improve their service.
exactly. They know we need them, so they're like, "You get what I give you."
Mm.
Hence, I'm probably all pixelated and glitching. I bet.
Well, the images are just still. It's like live streams from like 2005. You know, um, I yeah, that stinks. Wonder. I forgot what I was gonna say. Yeah. Oh yeah, I was gonna say that's what I worry about moving out to the country. Like right now, I have incredible
Yeah,
internet. The poorest people in Philly have some fantastic internet. We have fiber, $40 a month all over the place. And the
yeah,
poorest people have the best internet in this town. So that's one thing I won't complain about. It's one benefit of like the big city markets. Whether or not there's poverty, there's still big markets, so the big companies have to do business here. So we have fiber.
yeah.
Um,
And they have to try at least a little bit. You know,
hmm
they have to compete with somebody else who could offer that service. I
Yeah,
think a lot of rural places are like that. Like
it's a
it's just
problem,
there's
huh?
not. Yeah. Hmm.
Dude. Even in Portland, that farm I was living on, up to 2016, the download and upload speeds were still in the range of 1 to 2 megabits per second. That's in the city, technically the city limits of Portland, but also kind of rural. Because it's in a rural space, they can't just run a goddamn new line down the hill. It's
Yeah.
very, yeah, they're very cheap. They're very cheap.
Yeah.
And they do make you live with their. Anyway, yeah, if
I
you
might
want to
have to
show
go
me
grab the
anything,
kiddo. Yeah, can I give you a tour and then yeah,
yeah, and then we'll
I
get
might have
bouncing
to go grab the kiddo in a little bit.
for sure.
Yeah, we're good. So right now, outdoors is kind of a mess because it's winter and there's not really a lot to show off. But an aspect that I'm also trying to get people into is not just stopping because the weather stops. So like finding out ways to keep growing stuff that staples and things like that without um, uh, having a lot of land outside and things like that. So aquaponics is a huge aspect of what I do.
Try to
And
keep the
yeah, I
camera
know,
still
probably.
on it. By the way, just try to keep the camera still on it so the feed doesn't have to.
Oh yeah, okay.
Right. So it
So
can.
there we go. At that, it's not really like a crazy. Here, I'll just look over my shoulder. It's not really like a crazy setup right now. This is kind of my experimental room, but a
So you
lot
got
of it
fish.
has. Yeah, yeah. So this is a basic aquaponics setup. Yeah, these fish are what feed my plants. Them with a mix of beneficial bacteria. I use air bubbles to keep water circulating, and it feeds the plants up here and cleans the water, oxygenates the water so that the fish have a good place to go. And I'm trying to push this because it is a way to keep growing your food without being at the mercy of the elements, as well as a good source of protein and products to sell. You can sell the fish after they get to a certain size, sell whatever produce you grow out of it, and things like that. So kind of like a one-stop shop.
Are those fish just like goldfish that grow, or what? Are they koi fish, or what are
Yeah.
they?
No, these are just regular goldfish. I've had them for a while. They've always just kind of loved it,
Wow,
so
those are
I just
like
try to keep them happy.
they're like
Yeah,
they're
they're
like
pretty
10 cents a
big.
piece at the pet store, right?
Yeah, yep. That's it. I just bought a whole bunch of them, and they're little workhorses. People don't like them anyway because they make the fish tank too dirty and
Mm-hmm.
stuff if you have a lot of them. So it's right up the alley
So
for aquaponics and things.
Nice.
Um, I'm about to start teaching students, high school students, how to do it with sturgeon, tilapia, catfish, things like that. So when those grow up, they'll have a marketable kind of
Edible.
product, I
Edible
guess.
food.
Yeah, yeah, that's the stuff. So that's pretty much it. What I'm working on right now. That and just getting all the gardens I run ready for the winter. But there's
Yeah,
still
those are
plenty to eat and plenty to grow. So
cool. All right, man. It was very cool conversation, different than direction. I'm glad we went this way. It was great. I'm
yeah,
glad,
I
like,
enjoyed it too, man.
yeah, yeah, it's funny because I was thinking, I don't know if I should bring up any kind of political angle to this, but because to me, a lot, there is a lot of motivation, social motivation to take care of yourself. And if, some people don't think about that at all, or just really enjoy the gardening and it has nothing to do with anything but that.
Yeah,
But I think the implications of it are huge. So props. You've been watching your feed for a few years as you get more and more into plants, and it's cool. So respect.
thank you. Man.
Um,
Likewise.
all right, it was fun. I'll let you go get your kid, and that's Nathan
Okay,
Brannon. You see him, dig it with Nate up there on the screen. Find him and support him.
that's the stuff.
Okay, thanks, buddy.
See you, man. Thanks
Bye.
for chatting.
Totally.
Bye.